Greetings and welcome back to MyfanwyNia studio here in Leitrim's Iron Mountains. Thank you so much for joining me today, and if you're new here, my name is Harriet and I am a visual artist based in Ireland's northwest. Today's video is going to be a tutorial in which I'm going to show you how I made this beautiful art journal. So after a few false starts to the year, I have been adjusting to the most recent lockdown. My children are on opposite ends of the school spectrum, with my youngest being 6 and in his second year of primary school, and my eldest in his final year of school, getting ready to do his leaving certificate. So trying to figure out the logistics in my time management with my art and with them being home from school has been quite challenging. I feel during these times we find ourselves reassessing what we are focusing our energies on. With less time to focus on creating polished pieces of artwork, starting a daily art journaling practice quickly moved up on my list of priorities. The intention about getting habitual about it, setting aside little time blocks each week to fill in a page or two of this visual diary. A place to keep my creative fire alive without becoming overly attached to the outcome. I feel as creators having a creative outlet is a very important form of self-care. It's that release of emotions and the mirroring back to us of our inner world, an expression of our state of being. It is through art that we connect with that intangible part of ourselves. This kind of creative freedom can ultimately boost our self-confidence because it makes us feel happy. Feeling the freedom of experimentation and the ability to make mistakes, we discover different ways of thinking, and all of these benefits continue way beyond our art journal. Your art journal could be a sketchbook, or filled with writing and doodle illustrations, a recording of your day, a smash book filled with memorabilia such as tickets, postcards and photos, a scrapbook filled with inspirational clippings or a muddled mishmash of everything, or a piece of perfection, all organized and perfectly neat. Whatever form your art journal will take, the only rule is that, like art, there are no rules. After looking around online at all the possible books I could have chosen as an art journal, I could not quite make up my mind to what kind of journal I wanted, so I decided to make my own. I wanted to make something that I could completely customize, where I could easily add or remove pages, choose my paper types and colors as my journaling journey unfolds. As a starting place, I began with these softback art journals. These are very standard art journals, the kind you might have used in school. They are very affordable with a simple staple binding at the side. One of these is a brown craft paper book by Artway, and these are 130 GSM sketchbooks and come in a pack of 6. I love working with mid-tone paper like this. It gives you a more immediate access to a wider range of tonal values, really bright whites and warm darks. The other one is of white cartridge paper, and this is 160 GSM, so a nice weight, which allows for a good versatile range of materials such as charcoals, pastels, ink and every type of pencil. I've drenched these types of pages in watercolor and gouache before, and they've held up quite well with just a light buckling to be expected of paper with this weight. If I want to use some heavier watercolor paper in my journal, I can just add these as needed. I wanted to be able to mix up the sheets of paper in my journal, so these books are just a starting place and a size guide to begin with. Measuring the book, I've cut out these pieces of chipboard to use as my cover, just a little bit longer in width than the width of the book, and cut them to the same height. I got these pieces from the back of old A3 sketch pads and cut out an extra little piece for use as the spine. My journal is going to be covered in fabric, and the fabric I have chosen is this beautiful piece of soft printed cotton. It's a space theme that a dear friend has given me, and this has white and yellow stars on, kind of milky galaxy of stars, with a timeless celestial feel. Of course, you can use any fabric you wish. Laying my boards down over the fabric, checking I have enough to cover both sides of these boards, my front and back cover, I can see I also have a little bit of an offcut at the top, which I'll put aside for later. Next, cutting around the card just loosely. You won't see these raw edges because they'll be tucked inside the book, so it doesn't matter if your cut is not completely straight, but you want to leave enough of the fabric that you can fold it around the edge of these card covers. I want both of the board covers to be wrapped individually, as each cover is going to be adjoined separately to the spine. So once I've cut my fabric, I'm going to use double-sided tape to cover my pieces of board. Using tape instead of glue will prevent the glue from seeping into your fabric, which would cause it to stiffen and lose its soft tactile quality. The double-sided tape that I am using is carpet tape, and this one is by 3M. I'm using my cutting mat, so I will be able to cut off any excess of tape neatly with my blade. Carpet tape is much stronger than regular double-sided tape because it's for holding down carpet tiles and intended to be permanent. So it's a very sticky tape, and you've got to be a little bit careful when you're handling it. It's very cheap to buy in quantity and has a nice width, which makes covering large areas quite easy and fast. Here I'm just stretching it long ways across the cover side by side and being careful to rub out any little kinks. There's a little bit of an overlap on one side of my board, which I'm going to use to fold over and tack the fabric edge to the back. When peeling off the backing tape, it's very sticky, so I'm being very careful not to put my hands on the tape too much once it's exposed. So now we're ready to put the fabric on, and we want to get all the creases out of the fabric, so this might take a few attempts to get just right. Starting with the little overlap of tape that I folded over, I'm just pulling one side of the fabric down, and that will help keep it in place while I pull all the creases out and stretch the fabric over the board, carefully rubbing out any fold marks in the fabric. Unlike paper, the fabric is strong, so there's a little bit of play, so I'm just lifting it up gently and pulling it tight where needed. I'm doing that all around the surface of the cover, noticing when any new folds or creases start to form, just pulling the fabric at the side closest to where the crease is and nice and tight, folding it over the edges and sticking it in place. I kept back a little bit of the shiny yellow cover paper from the back of the tape so I could pop it back over the exposed bit of tape on the back of the cover until I'm ready to stick the inside cover paper on. When the first cover is done, we will then repeat the process on the other board. For the spine, I'm using a different piece of fabric. I have this beautiful yellow mandala fabric that another dear friend of mine has given me. I feel it picks nicely up some of those yellow stars in the celestial fabric. I want my spine fabric to come a little bit over the inner part of the cover. The spine will go into the middle of the two cover boards. I quickly measure the fabric against my project. When I have centered it and have a better idea of where I'm going, I cut off the two pieces of excess to get a nice neat rectangle. Now I want to add some lace to this, but this is my personal preference and it's completely aesthetic, so you might like to add some ribbon or some other kind of trim here. You can really get creative with this part. All of the lace and trim I have been using for this project was sent to me by BeeBee Crafts, and they have an amazing array of lace, ribbon, trims, cords and sticky back faux leather fabric sheets. So for a bookbinding project, their site is a little bit of a candy store. They also have a YouTube program for small creative channels, so if you're interested in learning about that and seeing my craft haul, you can check out my last video. I took a little while choosing what colours would be best for this particular job. I honed in eventually on some blues, a yellow, some creams and a little bit of off-white and black. So what I want to do is create a ruffle along the edge of the spine fabric as it overlaps onto the cover. I could have chosen just one of these laces, but with such an amazing array of colours, I decided to combine a few colours and make a unique ruffle that combined colours from both my spine fabric and my cover fabric. playing around here just to see which one looks the nicest. I like the way the black looks, and it gave me some ideas for later on. But for this application, I felt like it got a little bit lost in the darkness of the space fabric. The blue, however, really popped, and I felt it looked nice on there. So choosing the blue, the yellow, and the cream lace, I like the look of them together, and that they seem to be enhancing the colours out of the fabric that I'd already chosen for the book. Choosing the brighter cream colour because it was closest to the cream shade on the mandala spine fabric. I used my sewing machine for this part, sewing a hem either side of the spine fabric, because this is going to be the exposed edge on the front of my journal. This will also make a nice and tidy edge to ruffle my lace against. I put in a tiny hem about 1 centimeter in depth and just run over it with a very simple straight stitch on my sewing machine, and then I did the same on the other side of the fabric. Just pushing my sewing machine out of the way there so I can explore the lace and figure out how I was going to attach the lace together. These are the 3 colours that I have chosen for ruffling. You want it to be at least 3 times the length of the fabric edge you're going to be ruffling it against. So I measured out against my spine fabric 1, 2, 3 of the lengths of lace. And then I placed the lace together in combinations that I liked. I used this neutral cream coloured lace as a separator between the blue and the yellow lace, because I found with the way the lace is transparent, when you lay the yellow directly over the blue, it gave off a little bit of a green tinge, which I wanted to avoid. Layering up the lace, I joined them all together at the point where all of the lengths of lace intercept, and run a straight stitch over them to hold them in place perfectly spaced, giving me a staggered lace edge. Because the lace is transparent, you can easily see the bottom layer of blue lace beneath the other 2 colours. This is where I am focusing my line of stitching. As you can see, all of these 3 pieces are now 1 length of layered lace. Now I'm going to attach this piece to my spine fabric and ruffle it against my hem. So putting my spine fabric back in the machine, this time facing down, as I don't want to have any messy sewn folds showing on the front of the book. So holding it in place with the foot of my machine, I started my ruffles. I'm just pinching and sewing and pinching it up and sewing over it. I just did this repetitively all the way down the spine fabric, and there was a little bit left over. So I slightly overestimated it, but it's better to have a bit extra than to run out mid-ruffle. So once I'd done both sides like this, I have the makings for my lovely spine with a detailed ruffled lace edge. I decided I wanted to introduce some black to soften the visual aesthetics of the detailed ruffle against the 2 pattern fabric, using a little bit of black cotton lace to cover the line of stitching attaching the ruffle to the fabric. I also got this stunning lace from my BeeBee Craft haul. This thick cotton lace trim has a luxurious quality. I feel it will really add a rich lushness to the feel of the whole journal. It has a sticky back tape on the back, so it will be really easy to position into place. Now we're ready to assemble the spine and attach it to the front and back journal cover. Starting out by putting the carpet tape on my chipboard support. It took me a few attempts before I was happy that I'd placed the sticky chipboard in the middle of the fabric. I folded the fabric to help me gauge better where the middle actually was. Because this fabric has a structured repetitive pattern, I used that as a guide to place my spine cardboard, and that was easy to make it line up straight. Next, to attach it to the book covers, I stuck tape on the fabric side of my book covers as far as the overlap was going to be. It was easy then to stick it in place, repeating the process on the other side of the cover, the front and the back. So this is what we've got so far, and now to fold the excess around the back. So peeling off these yellow backing papers and then adding some more tape on the inside of the book. Because of the bulkiness of this sewn lace trim, I've just cut off the edge of the fold in the ruffle at a diagonal, just to take the thickness out of it and prevent too much of a lump on the inside cover. Once the sticky part of the tape was exposed, I pulled it tight and folded it up, sticking it down securely. I'm then repeating the same process on the other side of the spine. I'm feeling excited about how it's turning out so far, and that's the basic shell of my book. I have my black cotton lace trim cut, which I'm just going to add along the edge of that stitching. I think this really gives a nice bold contrast between that frilly lace ruffle and the patterned fabric, as it was looking a little bit busy. I used the double-sided tape that was already attached on the back of this cotton lace trim, pulling it around the inside of the book. So the next part is to do some lining paper on the inside of my journal. And I've measured out a nice piece of Fabriano watercolor paper to go on the inside. And I'm going to again use the carpet tape to attach this. And instead of sticking the tape onto my journal cover, I'm going to stick my tape neatly onto the Fabriano. This is a heavyweight watercolor paper. It's 300 GSM, so all of the edges of the fabric and the little bits of excess trim on the inner cover will not be so noticeable underneath this paper because it's so thick. It's going to give the inside of the book such a lush quality feel. So I'm just double checking it's the right size, laying it against the inside of my journal cover. It's a little bit smaller, and that's just what I want. So the inside of the book, you're going to be able to see a couple of millimeters of the fabric edge around the inside of the book. Before I stick this down, I want to mark where the spine is going to be on my cover paper, and I'm just using my blade to lightly score, but not cut, just score the inside where the spine will fold on my cover paper. So when I stick this piece of lining paper inside the book, I will have no problem getting these inner creases nice and neat. So when that's done, it's time for pulling off the backing tape, and again this is very sticky and you're only going to get one shot at this because this is paper. It's not like the fabric where you can pull it back up. Because it's paper, it will rip. So doing my best, it could have probably been a little bit higher, but it will have to do, so just patting it down all of the way. And now you can see that the spine is folding where I scored it, very neatly folding it back at each side to get the perfect fold. And I'm so excited that this came out so neatly. So here is my spine, and now I'm going to have to attach my pages and make a binding. The binding I've decided to do is a ribbon-based binding. I'm going to put 4 pieces of ribbon going up the inside of the spine, and I'm going to use eyelets to add a kind of corsetry to the spine, threading the ribbons through the spine. To do this, I wanted to put some holes into the spine, and I'm going to use a lever punch. So this little sketch is the design, and I figured out it's kind of a crisscross, then the ribbons run up inside the book and come out of the holes at the top. So I need to do 8 holes at the bottom of the spine and 4 holes in a straight line across the top. Following my little sketch, I'm just marking where the holes are going to go on the inside of the book with my pencil. So this is the lever punch that I'm going to use. It can be a little bit tricky. You have to clean out any little bits of paper that might get stuck in the punch as you go to keep it sharp. I'm using a medium-sized hole, which is big enough for my eyelets to fit through. So after you've punched the holes, here I'm just poking out any residual bits of cardboard with my crochet hook, but you can use a pencil or whatever you have around. And when I'm ready, I'm going to pop in my eyelets and do that with an eyelet punch. One side of the eyelet punch sits a ring and the other side is a little knobble. So the ring side of the eyelet obviously sits into the ring, and once you've got that in place, you want to punch them down. So once that was done on all of the holes, it's time to thread our ribbon through the spine. So I'm measuring out 4 lengths of ribbon, and I want a little extra to tie in a bow, enough to go through the book as corsetry on the bottom, measuring out 6 lengths in total, which I have cut into 2. So each length is 3 lengths worth of the spine of the book. Following my little design sketch, I'm threading up the ribbon binding. Just like tying your shoes or threading up a corset, that's the bottom 2. And now all 4 cords are on the inside of the book. and they're going to just run straight up inside the book and come out of the upper holes, one at a time. I decided to do 2 separate bows on the top. I could have joined them all together, but I wanted to be able to adjust each half of the journal separately rather than loosening all the pages at once. So there's a nice bit of length here, as well as a bit of dangly ribbon on the side of the book, and I think that looks really cute. It just adds to the overall pretty ribbon lacy aesthetic of the book. So here are the 4 ribbons going up inside the book, and first we have to loosen them to be able to put the pages in. I'm not untying the knot altogether, just loosening it a little bit. As you can see, that's made the ribbons very loose on the inside. So now back to our sketchbooks, I'm just going to pop out the staples. So opening the book, you can do this with a blade or a knife, or nails if you have strong nails. I used a craft knife. So pop them out, and now all the pages in your sketchbook are loose. So I wanted to mix up the paper, and I wanted to have the option of adding different types of paper in over time. Maybe some black paper or some coloured paper. Whatever paper I choose to use, but for now I've got this lovely brown craft paper and this lovely white 160 GSM cartridge paper. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking a few sheets from each and I'm mixing them up so there's a bit of diversity in the book, and I've just split these into 4 little bundles of paper, 1 for each ribbon, and I'm just tucking these in under the ribbon. Once they're in, I'm going to pull the ribbon at the top of the spine very tightly and tie each one tightly in a bow. Keeping it tight, I've double knotted my bow, and that's going to hold your pages in very well. And again, if you want to take the pages out or add more pages in, you're just going to untie the ribbons, and your book is very customizable that way. So here you can see these pages are tied tightly into the spine, and I absolutely love the journal so far. It's come out so beautifully. I've got a little bit of the blue celestial spacey fabric left, so I decided to make a little inside pocket on the very back cover. For this, I've cut myself out a little piece of Fabriano, and I'm just going to mark it to the height of the inside cover paper. Using my cutting mat, I've just scored my Fabriano where I've marked it. These are my fold marks. And again, I'm just going to cover this thick Fabriano paper with fabric to make my pocket. I had just enough of the spacey celestial fabric left. As before, I'm going to be covering my paper with carpet tape and stretching out the fabric, sticking it down just like I did with the cover of my book, wrapping the edges around the back and sticking them down with more carpet tape. Using another piece of Fabriano that has been measured and cut to the height to fit between the 2 folds of my fabric covered pocket, and the width about an inch bigger than the covered pocket to enable it to be folded back. This will be the inner part of the pocket, and it will hide any of the messy cut fabric edges. I want to fold this part, so I will need to score along the edge to get a clean fold. Just quickly covering these 2 bits of exposed tape with a little bit of the backing paper, so it's not going to stick to the table when I score the edge. So just going against the edge of the card very neatly and folding it up. It's not completely perfect, but it won't be seen as it will be the inside of the pocket. There is a little bit of exposed tape left here that would stick part of the pocket shut. So I've just covered this back up with a little piece of paper. I just used a little bit of light printer paper for this. Now I can pull the 2 sides up and stick it down. To attach this to the inside of the cover, I'm just going to put some tape on these bits of fabric and on the back. And when I'm ready, I'm going to peel off that backing paper, and now I'm ready to stick my pocket into place. Opening up the book and deciding which side will definitely be my front cover, because I want to keep the pocket in the back. Just positioning it and popping it into place, trying to get it as neat as I can. I love that the book now has a little pocket to put any odds and ends or bits of ephemera into. Just looking at the bottom of the pocket, because of the thickness of the double layers of Fabriano paper here, you can see a little bit of a white edge between the fabrics. So I've decided to cover that up with a little bit of the black trim I used on the cover. And again, this is the trim I got from the BeeBee Crafts haul in my last video. They gave me this beautiful lace as part of their YouTube program, so if you are interested in how you can take part, you can also check that video out. So just here I'm going to stick it along the edge of the fabric and pop it into place. And I'm pushing in the cut ends with my metal ruler. And as you can see, that's completely covered that little white edge. It's also added a little bit of something special to the pocket that matches the front of the book. So here is my art journal, and I'm absolutely thrilled with how this came out, with this lovely lace spine and the 2 different types of paper inside it, all strong and in place. I can't wait to start filling it up with art. I do hope you found this tutorial useful, and if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I'm hoping to share some of my art journaling practice here over the coming months. I also have another little book cover project coming up on my channel, a lacy rainbow themed journal. So if you enjoyed this video, please do consider subscribing. Hope you all have a wonderful and inspiring week, and I will see you all again soon for another video. Bye bye!